6 o'clock, so let's get the working session started. Turn on your microphones. Anything for citizens forum? Then we'll go right into the finance review.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so the first part we'll go over is the monthly update. So the financials have been updated through January 31st, 2025. I did catch, so the information on the front sheet comes from this monthly budget update. I did catch that the information did not roll into my 24 and 25 column, so I quick fixed it for the board meeting and made an adjustment. It was showing as 100% expended for the year when it wasn't.
So the one that we have is correct?
So the new one that's separate, that one is corrected. So on this sheet, where we're at for the year, that didn't change at all. It's just the comparison to 2024 and 2023. So for our revenues, state revenue is at 47% received. So if you look at the very top, in comparison to 2024 and 2023. So right now we're at 48%. Last year it was 56%, and the year before it was 80%. State revenues, we are at, sorry, I just said state. Federal revenues, 7% received. Local revenues are at 48% received. So overall, all revenues are at 47.65% received for the year. For food service, we are at 38% received. Community service, 13% received. Debt redemption, 12% received. We have one federal grant this year, the Title 401. We are receiving $120,726.50. We initially budget $90,000 in revenue. This additional revenue has been included in the revised budget. So our quarter one expenses that were submitted was $9,845.31, and we just submitted our quarter two expenses of $33,533.68. For our expenditures, our salaries and wages are 45% expended. Employee benefits, 43% expended. Purchase services, 62% expended. Supplies and materials are 46% expended. And our capital equipment is 12% expended. Expenditures by site, food service is 51% expended. Community ed, 44% expended, and debt redemption is 100% expended. We made our bond payment last month. So looking at our monthly budget report, again, we are following budget pretty close. It's actually looking very good even comparing to prior years. We're at 58% expended through January. Just keep in mind, food service is off slightly just because the expenditures primarily occur within 9 months, as well as revenues. They're always a month delayed. So, any question on this information? Okay. So overall, when you factor in all funds combined, we're sitting at a deficit of $794,686.40. I wouldn't worry about that. Just keep in mind our revenue is very, very delayed. Last year, it was really delayed just because of our pool payment was up significantly last year, and that delayed revenue came in June. So I included a ideas payment sheet just so you can see what's going to come up. So It just shows what we've received so far this year. And now coming up for the month of March, we're going to receive $730,410 from the state. April, $727,604 from the state. May, $420,530. And then June is just over $300,000, and that's because in May and June we receive tax money from the county. So, and then the state also withholds 10% of our revenue that we won't get till October. So keep that in mind. We're sitting much better right now than we were at this time last year, and we wrapped up last year looking really well. Student activity reports and student activity transaction reports were attached. We did have one change. There was just a coding issue between two of the classes that Jill took care of.
Can I just ask you one question on
Go
it?
for it.
The November 15th for the pay period, where it says operating funds is $0, can you explain why there's nothing there?
It's just how they spread out our revenue. In November, that's when we get our tax payment from the county. So the state withholds state aid payments when we get payments from the county.
And the same
with June. Yep, November and June, and we usually get a small one in May too. We get a couple during the year that are fairly small, but those are the biggest payments.
Thank you.
Yep. So I did also provide a copy of our cash report. So if you compare this to last month, our cash on hand is smaller just because we had that large bond payment. But with the income we should be coming in, that should be coming in the next couple months, we're not going to need to use that line of credit with Border. Last year at this time, we were worried about making payroll. This year, I'm not concerned at all. We have plenty cash on hand to make payroll, so much better.
I'll ask you another question. Going back to this, in the upper right hand corner of the SMS form here. For the 20-25% of budget for federal revenues, it's at 7.41%, but it's so much higher, in 2024. Why is that such a small amount? Help me understand that number.
It was like grant dollars. And then too, you're factoring in like our lunch dollars, our mixture of state and federal too. But the federal was thrown off even prior to that, just each year because of our increased ESSER dollars or COVID dollars.
The nature of school finance, if you look at 2023, used to 24%.
So we don't have any. We don't have any other grants this year now besides the title.
Okay.
Federal funding for schools is relatively low. It's usually between 7 and 9%. It was just up significantly during COVID. So.
In 2024, it wasn't the COVID year though. No,
we were still collecting.
We were able to actually, now that I think of it, there was a Finance 160 grant. It was called After School Enrichment. So with the help of one of my coworkers, we were able to apply for those extra funds and use it to pay for busing for after school activities and to pay our coaches. So we kind of got extra money, and a lot of schools didn't do that. So I was really thankful we were able to do that. But also the COVID money, schools could spend it all. We had 3-4 different grants. You could spend all of it in one year, or you could spread it out. Yeah. And we could just roll it over to the next year.
And remember, this is not calendar year.
Mm-hmm.
This is school fiscal year.
Yeah, July to July.
Yeah.
I think say it's an accurate statement that we don't actually know how much money has come in until, September or October? Yeah, that's how goofy school financing is.
Yep, so when Diane submits her MARS data to the state, that recalculates how much our revenue is going to be. So then then I pull in everything before our audit process, then we go through it and I calculate what our state aid is and split it out between all the categories. And then I'll double check our county revenue, and that is reconciled, and that reconciliation isn't complete till the fall. And then the auditors check it too, so.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on where we're at right now? Before I jump into the budget? Okay. Okay, so the budget, it was set in June, and Jeff made significant cuts along with the board. So on the first page, I just provided our overview that was provided last year, and then I just made some adjustments. So the budget was based on an enrollment of 215 students. I still continued the budget on 415 students and then shifted. You have a question?
You said 215?
Sorry, 415 students. 415 students. And then I just shifted a little bit based on what grade category they're in, 1st through 3rd, kindergarten, 4 through 6, and then 7 through 12. I continued to under budget our enrollment. We're actually sitting at, hold on a second. Yeah, 424 students. So we under budgeted by 9. So when we come in at the end of the year, our revenue should exceed what I projected. But we just do that to be safe because we don't want to over budget students in case something happens during the year. So, so right now we're looking good for that. The VPK, we budgeted 9 students. We're currently sitting at 12, but for them, it's not 1-for-1. So if we have 18 kids, they actually count as being less. So we're still under budgeting VPK by 3. So just looking this over, and I use the revenue projection module that the state has on their website. So when I did our budget in June, it wasn't the newest module. It takes the state a little while to release their new module with the updated, trying to think, calculations or formulas. So, which actually works better because now when I use the new one for 2025, all the revenue bumps up a little bit. So, Gen Ed aid, special education aid, and several other aid components all went up just a little bit. So I'll go over all of that information, but first I'll go over some of the cuts and the revisions that we had made this year compared to the prior year. We had reduced our superintendent salary from 80%, 100% to 80%, and there was a reduction of benefits. We had an MOU for the superintendent to complete some custodian supervisor duties. That was approved in July.
What's MOU?
Sorry, memorandum of understanding.
Okay, go ahead.
So basically when I did the budget in June, we didn't have that MOU in place until July. So this $6,755 will be added to this new revised budget because it didn't happen until July.
The 6755, is that?
So that wasn't budgeted for.
Okay.
Yeah, but we didn't hire a custodial supervisor, so in the end, we saved money. So then I did increase custodial salaries from $370,000 to $390,000. We did hire another part-time employee, and we've actually needed him to help out just quite a bit because we've had another staff member off. I don't feel we're going to hit $390,000, but I did it just to be safe. I increased our utility expenses by $16,400. I adjusted our LTFM expenditures just to match our payments. We were higher in some areas and lower in some areas, so I just shifted to match the budget and where we are currently at. I increased our elementary teacher salary by about $20,000 just because it seemed like we were running a little high, but then our sub-teacher pay is running much lower, so I decreased that by $8,000. Same with high school, it is running lower again this year, which is nice. Across the whole school, all expenses, I was able to decrease our consulting fees. In athletics, we did reduce the wages and consulting fees by over $15,000 just because Sam had some staffing cuts. We reduced our capital expenditure budget by $14,000. That is actually included, I'll just bring that up because I want to point it out. Second page of this document. So it's line by line what's budgeted for our capital. We really cut that down from prior years, but my goal is to move as much as we can to capital expenditures to bring that fund balance down. So any technology expenses that we have this year, or even bill, we can code to capital. So we'll spend down that fund balance and then hopefully build that unassigned even more. So we only budgeted $44,100 for capital expenses. The principal contract was finalized and split 50-50 between elementary and high school. We had a high school social worker reduction, and the remaining social worker was split between elementary and high school. We had a dean of students reduction. The building and grounds supervisor position was not filled and was not budgeted for. Custodian salaries were increased to include contract settlements, an interim lead custodian, interim lead maintenance, and part-time buildings and grounds supervisor. The transportation supervisor's salary increased for additional duties of entering and approving payroll and time off. The athletic director and athletic director assistant budget was increased. Sam is fulfilling some of the role of the dean of students. There's a reduction of district office staff and food service coordinator. Between Jill, myself, and Diane and Jeff, we all split up that role. We budgeted $20,000 in clerical food service that is split between Diane and Jill, and other assistants with food service or paraprofessionals will also be coded to food service clerical. So if we have a sub that comes in and helps with the students enter their numbers and things like that, as long as they're working with food service, we can code them there. One elementary teacher had moved to high school science. One title enrichment teacher was reduced, and one moved to voluntary pre-K. From last year to this year, there was a reduction of 4 paraprofessionals. One high school special ed para moved to title. Reduction from 2 to 1 school readiness paraprofessionals. And 1 media center paraprofessional moved to elementary special ed. We had a reduction of $35,000 in subscriptions. We did budget for a severance in Fund 4. And then prior to audit, I'll continue to work to increase our unassigned fund balance by spending down our fund balances and revenue as much as possible. So on this next document, I just provided our original budget on the left and the revision on the right, and so you're able to see the difference, whether it's an increase or decrease in each area. Primarily the difference was in Fund 1. And I did budget that we are going to finish off the year at $434,184,000 for the good, which is $74,587 higher than we had budgeted in June. Included in this packet was the initial plan when we had made cuts that Jeff and the board had worked to put together, and then the add backs when we just looked at it again for the last time and said, hey, we do need to fill some positions and make some shifts. So that's the explanation from the budget in June. Other than that, I didn't make a lot of changes in the budget. Again, it's running really close, on track, just a lot of smaller shifts, and nothing is running over budget by any means. Some UFARS lines are a little higher, but then some are way lower, but everything overall looks really good. So good work by the board making cuts last year. I think it's just really positive thing that we can let the community know that we did everything we need and that we're on track where we should be. So next we'll be having meetings with all the supervisors between March and April, and then make our revised 3 to 5 year plan just coming up where we think we're going to be again. We did that last year. We're just going to reevaluate enrollment and what we think is going to happen, what we need in the building, things like that.
You and Jeff, whoever else was involved with shuffling things around to be able to come in under the lower budget.
Do you have any more questions on the budget?
On the, let me shuffle some papers.
Okay.
There's an example sheet, but all the line items and where you categorize things in the budget, this is just a screenshot.
Mm-hmm.
And you have all the, I'm guessing that's all the code and the categories on the far left side. Is there a kind of a cheat sheet to help somebody understand what those codes mean and those numbers mean?
Yes. It takes a long time.
And
Just,
yeah,
so I actually have a manual. It's called the UFirst manual. But
it's clear like there's a lot of things. I mean, it seems
Yeah.
like there's thousands of categories, you know.
yes.
And then going through this painstakingly, just looking at it, it seems like at times like maybe something, there's almost like a category that, oh, here's a category for a tractor capital lease, budgeted $0, but there's $15,137 year to date. But then you go and find there's another category that's very similar to that, so it might be just
We
put in the wrong
shift the
category.
expenditure at audit.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah. So some of it we just make a shift. For instance, like gifted and talented. We don't always code expenditures there during the year, but when I'm closing out audit, I'm like, hey, we got $15,000 in revenue, so I'm like, oh, I'm going to move these expenses there because I know they qualify as an expenditure. So usually that's what we do. And as far as the lease payments, we did have to set up some new codes going through audit, now that I think of it. So I used a capital lease code for, well, no, our tractor we had coded to, it was like an equipment capital code. But the auditors came in, they're like, oh, can you set up this code because I really want it here? So
There's
then we shifted.
Under that same page, I think there's a category for equipment,
Yeah.
budgeted $25,950. Amount to put in that category expended so far is $725. So I'm guessing that's
That was bus.
okay.
Yeah, so it's just shifting, like, between last year's auditors and this year's auditors, they do want things a little bit different. But we still budgeted for it, it's just somewhere different.
And so you would be responsible for the expense, every expense going through and making sure it's coded correctly in what appears to be, I mean, just crazy number of categories.
Yeah, so Jill does all the AP. She does a great job. But at the end of the year, that's when we do all our cleanup.
Well, this is a simplification, definitely correct me if I'm incorrect. So you've got these multiple pots of money of revenue coming in. With your expenditures, some can only come from one pot of money, some can come from multiple pots of money. And you shift them all around depending on how full each pot of money is. Is that a very simplified?
So like right now, all our state revenue is just in a couple categories. But once we're all done and the Mars submission is finalized, then we split out our revenue to like 25 different areas. And then we have to spend down each of those areas. Some of the areas, if you don't spend them down, you lose the money. Some of the areas, you don't have to spend them down. But like, for instance, capital is 302. Object 302. So for sure, I'm looking at our, once I'm going through audit and I know our revenue, like we're gonna get this much, I wanna spend all of that capital money as much as I can, especially with how we're sitting now. Some schools are gonna wanna build it up. It just depends on what position you're in. But, so that's usually what we do. And then even the auditors will make a recommendation, or we'll ask them what we should do in some cases too. But staff development aid, we had a set aside before. We were able to spend all of that down last year. So usually you have a set aside that you can roll over. And the rules change each year. So now I'm drawing like APAC. We're getting a lot more money for APAC this year, but yet we can roll it now, right? Yeah, we were able to roll some of it, while before you had to spend all of it in 1 year.
You know the sessions that they offered in Deep River in July? They do that every summer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I went, and there's not a lot of school board members that go, but I went, and Jill went.
You went to all the sessions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I mean, they cover, there's a good part of one day that covers UFARs and how things get coded and what things can go under which fund or program or, I don't know. And I might have a handout I could look at.
They change every year. We got some additional revenue last year that we had to spend down. And then we did get some revenue I had to give back. They had this new para training. Well, they actually gave us the revenue, even though we didn't actually do any para training. So I'm like, nope, sorry, we didn't do that. We have to give it back. But it's just this new revenue source that they came up with for some new state standards. And that we couldn't just do the training on our own. It has to go through a cooperative. And then like we were pleasantly surprised our special ed revenue went up. I think it was $160,000 after we finished our audit. So that was like a great surprise. Usually that's the case, so that's why we always budget low, slightly low on our student count. So.
Oh yeah, that's the other kicker. Well, pots of money that get the revenue, yeah, they don't tell you how much money is going to be in those pots. You have to kind of guess.
So also, we did talk about this briefly today, but just kind of keep an eye on what's going on at the state right now. Once we get closer to June, it might be even more difficult to budget just because we don't know if the state's even going to be ready. So we might even have to budget our revenue with no increase for next year. Or just be very conservative on it, just because just reading the news and the update, looking at a state deficit, they're talking about cutting education spending now, moving forward the next 4 years. So really, really sad considering we had just an increase last year, but that's just the way it's looking. I can share this article that was released, and it just indicated how much per year they're planning on cutting. So not good, but just keep an eye on it, talk to your representatives. Hopefully we can at least stay where we're at if possible instead of having cuts. So more questions?
Not yet.
Okay, it's fine. It's a lot to take in. But I can provide, like a,
Robin said she might have something.
well, more of an explanation, because when Jill started, I'm like, here's a copy of my Bible. And I like would go through, so like, for instance, 01 is Fund 1. But then the next 3 codes, 005 is school-wide, 100 is elementary, 200 is more extracurriculars or extra things.
And
Well,
there's no
300
legend.
is high school.
There's no
Yeah.
legend provided, I'm just like.
I know, so I can provide a summary just to help, because it's a lot. I know when I first started doing this job, it was a lot. You really have to just stick it out, and it takes a long time, so don't feel bad, because it really is a lot.
As I recall, Lynn had asked once to put instead of the code, the wording, but the wording ends up being so long that it went off the cell, and it wasn't feasible to try and even have the wording that way instead of the codes.
And we can always change a description. I always tell Jill that if it helps you know what something is, go for it. So I usually, if it's transportation, if the coding is transportation, I try to make sure all the UFARs say transportation. It's just a lot easier for, like, when a new staff member comes in too, and for the board to review it. Oh, but I didn't tell you, in the packet I also emailed, and I think you were looking at the budget to actual, I'm guessing,
Yeah.
budgetary comparison of the budget to actual. So I include in the packet like school-wide, but then the supervisors on a monthly basis get their own areas, so they can just keep track of their expenditures where they're at, so. Okay.
All right, well, let's go to the board committees. Superintendent search, the full workshop with the full board.
We can share.
So we had that workshop, I mean, in a nutshell, that was more like the referendum stuff.
There was one
We've had
2 weeks
two
ago.
workshops.
Yeah, we had the
The last
workshop.
one was the referendum.
Yep.
The one before that was the one that was scheduled to discuss the superintendent position.
Yep.
And you
Guess
want to start at the superintendent position, we're just providing an update, or
yeah, I guess
it's from that workshop, it's my understanding that Superintendent Nelson is, his request at that workshop was requesting, his advice was for the board to move forward with a search for a superintendent and to work with the Minnesota School Board Association for that process. And I mean, that was kind of the final outcome of that.
I can give an update on that. I have been in contact with Lee Warren, I believe is his last name, and we'll be contacting him again here, and then I guess we'll get the ball rolling.
And I know there was discussion, I don't know if I'd call it discussion, in this thought process in my own head, for the most part. I think there was a community question as to whether or not we would be having to make a vote on that process, but I don't
We do
think
not,
there is any reason
because we already accepted the resignation.
And so,
That's where I was confused as well.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So there wouldn't be any more movement on that today, because we're already moving forward with what the board already decided.
The only thing we would have been voting on today would have been to rescind the resignation, and I notice it's not even on the agenda, so.
Is the MSBA still coming up in person? Is that what the
Well-
conversation was? I don't.
No, they might be. I mean,
I thought that was the original meeting, was that they were.
Well, the original meeting was the one that we had, and that's when we turned it into more of a workshop. They were gonna be up here in person,
Okay.
and then that's when things changed, and that's when it kind of went all over the place. So we used that meeting where they were gonna be here in person to have our discussion.
Sure, I didn't know if that was rescheduled for an in-person.
Not at this point, not yet.
So I would
If
just,
it's, oh, go ahead.
so they will come.
Oh.
That's the next step. And you just need to know when you schedule that, make sure we have 3 days lead time and let Jill know so that it's posted, because it needs to be posted as a public meeting. So we just need to
When
keep
we
that in mind.
talk with them.
Yep.
It needs to be a
Yep,
public
it's
meeting.
all-
Okay.
Yep, it's all open to the public,
Okay.
so, yep.
My thought is we should see if they can come up sooner than later, and if it, based on their schedule, and if it's more than a week or something, maybe I'd be fine with doing it over Zoom. I mean,
They, in my discussion with Lee, he's with the MSBA, because of the initial resignation, the ball had already started rolling, so it won't take very much for them to continue the process.
You just gotta find a day
Yep.
for you to sit down and go through the,
So
So
if
is
there's
that-
any dates in the next 2 weeks that you can't do, let me know, and I will see if I can get something organized. That's the ones you can't do. And otherwise, I'll try and schedule it for kind of a some evening, either in person or then via Zoom.
So it'll be an evening.
More than likely, I mean, it can be whatever we want, but I'm thinking, assuming evening works better for
Yeah.
most people. And you don't
Next
have to
week is
tell me,
great.
you don't have to figure it out right now. Just
well,
next
I will say the week after that, the 10th through the 13th is probably no go for me, so.
Just text me the dates you are not available or email, and I'll get something figured out.
Thank you.
And all communication is going, they contact you or Jeff or both?
They contact me.
Okay.
All right. Anything else about the superintendent? Okay, let's, referendum.
Yeah, I'd like an update. 'Cause
If anyone
I was not
remembers.
able to get to that one. And I apologize for not letting you know until after the fact. I was traveling and it just wasn't conducive to calling in.
Hey, Elizabeth, how did that work? Did
It was great.
Work out well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So an update would be great.
Yeah.
As long as we can see when she raises
Yeah.
her hand. and
Yes,
stuff. After
virtually
you go
raised my
to the
hand, yeah. We talked with Ehlers, correct?
Cross Anderson.
Kraus Anderson. And they talked about their experience with other districts that have failed referendums. And they talked to us about how they would help us move forward and kind of got a timeline of when things would have to happen. We all had input on what we've heard from community members and what we heard as, for example, I shared myself what I took away from it as just a community member at the time, not a board member. So it sounds like they had a lot of experience doing this and helping districts through this. And yeah, I'll let anyone in person add if there was a different experience.
That's-
They seemed very knowledgeable.
I sat in December with them. They came up. I don't remember who was all there. It was just like,
Erie Benson and Tracy Poe.
so was the information presented much different from that?
No,
meeting
it's
that we
very
were at?
similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just very vague strategy.
Yeah,
Planning.
yeah, we talked in just a lot of generalities, so.
It was, the general consensus was the need for the request still exists.
Oh, yeah.
And so they were trying to get a taste or flavor as to where the board was at as far as wishing to move forward with the process and continue it. And the general flavor was yes.
It has to be on the
May.
ballot by, or November.
November,
It's
yep.
coming up fast, so.
Yep. Because we have to have information to MDE by June.
But the
Something.
June meeting fell before our board meeting, so that's why they emphasized May. I mean,
May, or we'd have to have a special meeting. So,
Correct.
All right, anything else, Dan? Okay.
I did send out an email to everyone with preliminary stuff, so
They did?
Okay.
I did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
You
just
should
like
have
the
gotten it.
numbers, if they're so relevant
Yep,
of the,
kind of how we broke down what our focus was and stuff, kind of what I had recommended back in the previous May, so.
Anything else for referendum? We'll go on to the Facilities and Transportation Committee meeting. Guess that was me, Mr. Hack, and Mr. Severs. And I'm trying to remember exactly what
We were talking more of the facility, the how that worked with the custodians and just how that background was and what they were doing and how those things were going along without without a department head with the custodians, and just how that functioned and looked, and how they were, how the other custodians that were taking leadership positions within that were doing.
I guess my takeaway from that was things seem to be going okay, so far so good.
Things have been humming along. One thing that we did talk about was people getting burned out. And we don't want that to happen, and we want to have open communication with that and make sure that our custodian staff is not getting burnt out or overwhelmed and not being able to say, hey, I need help. So that was another thing we could talk about.
And combining of the building supervisor was intended to just be a temporary measure. It's not, it was never intended to be a permanent budget solution or anything. That was the primary reason, was to save money. So, but sooner or later, we will have to bring it back. And it would be in the best interest of the school, I think, if we did bring it back. We could probably go another year or so,
At least.
yeah. Anything else for Facilities and Transportation Committee?
We also talked about the FEMA appeal, the second appeal.
Oh, yeah, that was denied.
So it was denied, so we have well over $50,000 to address the track situation.
Would you mind just kind of expanding on that, maybe just a brief overview of that process or what took place? As far as the request for the funding, and then there's many appeals, and then
Yeah, it's
ultimately
quite a process. It probably goes back, must be going on almost 2 years now.
2022 or 2023, that's the
It's at least
flood.
2 years when we had the flood. And Seth was here then, so he did the first application. And that came back much lower than what we had sent. And our argument was the rubber coating, you can't just patch it and do all this underlying work and then just patch the top, because it's not going to work. So we did a second appeal, and FEMA wasn't buying it, so we have $50,000. I think originally it was like $70,000, and some of it was for the driveway along the bus garage there, where we had that culvert work done. I can send you all the data that was sent and all that. It was
Yeah,
pages
no,
and
I'm just-
pages of stuff, and
mainly for the public's benefit,
yeah,
just so that,
yeah.
because I know there was a lot of confusion regarding the track getting repaired.
oh, with the referendum
with the
stuff.
referendum.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about, so this FEMA money is specific to the damage to the track from the
Yep,
2020
but it's
flood.
very specific.
Yep.
It's got very specific spots, and just those spots that were identified.
And so they've approved, and after a couple appeal attempts by the school, they denied the appeals, and there's $50,000 to make
Roughly.
repairs to the track, and it's not enough to refinish it.
The
so it's-
refinishing
we're
is
gonna have to-
$200,000-300,000, just
The number 307,000.
something like that, yeah.
So,
So,
and then we had talked at the facilities meeting, well, maybe I'd asked it, I don't remember the response, or if we got an answer. So how long do we have before we need to use that?
I still
think
have
there
to
was-
find out, its response from FEMA right now is a little slow,
Oh, okay.
so.
Okay.
You know, it's an unlimited amount of time, I know from other, like.
Yeah.
I think in the appeal I had put June 26th, and I was just throwing a dart at the calendar. But I think you can go back a couple times and extend that out, but. So part of our discussion was, what do you do with 50,000? How do you fix it? And what are you gonna end up when you're done, so.
Yeah.
So we're looking at contacting the companies that gave us the original quotes and say, this is what we have. Send them the information and see what they can do. So it's gonna be a patchwork it's about the only way we can do it.
Because the original appeal was denied because it didn't show enough damage, is that what they articulated, FEMA?
Yeah, it was
What was
only,
the second
they're very specific to the damage, where we said, well, we can't fix it without replacing all of the top layer on it, so.
For anybody who doesn't know, the main damage to the track, there's drain tile underneath the track. There was, in this case, there were specifically 3 lines of it. So then you had about this path on, say, 2 feet on either side of these drain lines that go under the track where they're kind of sank down. So they're literally, FEMA's only concerned with the 4-foot by 50-foot stretch, the 2 of them. And then they don't care about the rest because the argument is, well, the flood caused damage to those specific spots. It's not on them to replace the whole track. They argument.
And I'm learning through this, and part of the concern was is in order to be like have a valid track for a tournament or a meet or something like that, the track has to meet specific requirements. And I'm not fluent on them all, but the concern is if you start patching it, will we be able to meet it?
Yep.
And so it's, we can probably start to think about repairing it. So anyways, it's, we gotta figure out, as Jeff said, the right way to do it, or ask them to come up and take a look at it and say, here's what we got. And we fix it with this amount of money.
And the last thing that it comes to my mind, pollution control gave us the blessing or whatever with the tank removal, because we had a little bit of that spill, so that's been taken care of, and so we're good with that.
School forest?
Good meeting. Talked about the property that's out, the south of here, turning that into a school forest, and how we were going to manage that.
I wonder if we made a vote on that officially.
I don't think so. We were talking about
Okay.
that at the meeting. And the trees that we could plant there and turning it into the school forest, I believe, you don't have to pay taxes on it at that point in time. So those were some things that we talked about there. Talked about the ski event that happened here 2 weeks ago. Last Wednesday.
Last Wednesday.
It was last Wednesday, very cold, a lot of people showed up, which was great. Had a lot of skis from the school, and a bunch of kids and parents showed up. And they had a fire out there with some hot dogs and marshmallows. And I went out there, and that's where everybody gathered. I don't know how far they got down the path, because it was very cold, but the fire was very inviting. So it was
harder.
A lot of discussion, I guess, regarding how to engage a few students that are more hands-on in nature and kind of gearhead / more towards the skill trades. I guess you kind of hit on maybe bringing in some resources to Marvin.
Yeah, we talked about that. We talked about going over, taking them over to the ARC and showing them that. The ARC is a tech school that is in Warroad itself, and it's funded great. They have a lot of great equipment in there for people that want to go in the technical field, and a lot of, you can get an associate's degree from there right locally, for these young people that are interested in that. So talking about bringing them over there, showing them that, giving them a tour over at Marvin, which we're very open to over there at the Marvin facility. So just some different things like that. We talked about there's a new policy that's coming out. I forget what it was for, that you were working on. And then we also brought up AI and how AI is very prevalent within the world now, and with our students and with all that, and how do we create a policy around AI, and how do we use it, and how do we protect the teachers and the students with the use of AI within the school and within class. So those were some things that we did talk about there at the meeting. It was a good meeting.
Anything else? We'll go on to the superintendent's report.
Well, I'm gonna go through my stuff fairly quick unless there's questions or need for more discussion, because I know Sam's got quite a lengthy presentation probably on some key stuff. If she can get back from
She'll
the
be
basketball
back.
game.
Dane, there's less than a minute left and we're up 45 to 36.
Ooh, good.
So that's why she's snuck out.
So our enrollment for January is 424, it's the same it was in December. Follow up on resignations. Usually I try to give information, and I just blipped it last time on how many years people had served. So I just want to run by those people. Bob Lane has 22 years of service at the district. Kurt Storbeck had 20 years of service. Wendy Storbeck was at 17, and Diane Lane at 14 years. So,
Wow.
so lots of experience leading.
Clarification on that, they're retired, right? Because I've had people going, look at it, you have all these people who are retired or resigning.
They're resigning.
And
Yeah.
after 20 some years, it's like, pretty sure they're retired, sort of.
I don't know. They are
It's labeled as a resignation.
resignation. So yeah.
Is there a difference? Do they?
Well, it depends on what they do with their TRA and stuff like that, so, but as far as I know, there was resignations, and
Okay.
I'm not privy to what they're gonna do in the future, but wish them well, and thanks for their
Still a lot of
service.
years.
Yeah. Also in your board packet, it's a action item tonight, is the retainer agreement for the master electrician services. Are there any questions on that, or?
Nope, I think it's a good thing.
Yep, we work with Pat Leclerc, and he works with Dale quite extensively. So it's a cost savings to have him come in and bill us for his services, and it's very minimal what he bills us to get our work done. Otherwise, we'd have to go to a electric contractor. So basically, we're gonna have a retainer of $2,500, and that'll cover his insurance and licensing fee, so he can get that on hand, and then he will send us a bill each time he comes in, and it's at a $50 an hour rate, until he exceeds that retainer, and then we'll start sending him a check after that, so.
That's the key right there, is just for clarification. So the retainer's paid, and then if he has work to do at the $50 an hour,
Yep.
there isn't a check going out until that retainer's.
Till yep. And if but it works the other way too. If there's $1,800 worth of services, the remainder he keeps, and that goes towards the next year's licensure, so.
But he still retains his license right now. It doesn't.
Yep,
It
it's
hasn't
every
lapsed
year.
and needs to renew.
Yeah, he has it right now.
Okay, that's what I was.
So if you approve it tonight, he'll get a check this week to cover his current cost.
You have to have a certain amount of hours to keep.
Yep.
And then he's also the master of record for the school in the state of Minnesota,
Yeah.
which we need.
So it benefits the district greatly to do that. Also in your working session packet, we had talked about the Lake of the Woods Honor Program proposal. And that's based on a request from a local family for honoring a past employee. And I know talking to all of you, the concern was, opening Pandora's box and not having any criteria, and how do you make that decision? So I did put together just a draft. I did a little bit of research. There's other documents out there. So I will wait for your direction if you want me to further develop that, if we want to get a committee started. If you need more information, if that's something the district wants to start doing, is kind of have a Hall of Fame type thing for past employees, past alumni, it's athletics, it's what they've done out in the world. There's lots of criteria in that document. So, and I will just ask the next month's meeting if you've had a chance to think about it, and if you want to move forward with it or leave some more time to consider it. The next one, there was some concern. I don't know if there still is a concern with the meet and confer conflict. I wrote out my information on what makes a conflict or not. And is there any question on there? Is there still a concern? The concern was with Mr. Hayes. It's tied with the teachers. Meet and confer is not contractual discussion. It's on improvements, communication with staff. Legally, technically, there's not any conflict of interest.
I guess that's where I was
So,
confused. Is
yep,
more than willing to
yep,
not be on it if there was a conflict, but then when the state said there isn't an issue,
Yep.
I guess I'm just confused what is.
yep. So I just brought it up because it was a question that came to me, and I sent out our policy on that. There is language in there that talks about, what does it say? So it talks about community perceptions and concerns ultimately rest with the board. So I wouldn't recommend changing it, but if there's perceptual concerns, I think this would be the time to discuss it and clear the air and decide what you want to do. But checking with MSBA and everything, it's not deemed what would be a conflict of interest. So
There's 2, 3 board members on that trip.
Nate and I are on that right now. So, I didn't even think about that being a conflict of interest until I was called about it. Being on it with him, I don't think there will be, because we need to go into that with
it's
unbiased.
Yep. It's a very transparent process. And if we just don't talk about contract pieces of it, there's nothing talked about salaries or anything like that.
Captured there that is problematic or anything like that, which may come up. We would capture that and bring it to the board.
Yep.
So, there's not really, I don't think, any decisions that are made of that meeting.
Just an open communication piece, that's all it is.
So listen and bring back whatever it is that they have and, look to see what we can do about that.
Okay, negotiations training is tomorrow in Erskine. Mr. Hack and I will be attending that. So it'll be an interesting negotiation sessions with what's going on down at the state, so. And then I won't go through this, but I did include legislative priorities for my last superintendent's meeting. With the lack of anticipating very little new revenue, a lot of our effort down in the Capitol, and I'll be going down March 11th or 12th, or maybe both days, to talk to legislatures on things that are important to Lake of the Woods School and some of the unfunded mandates and all that other extra stuff. If they could work on that, if they can't give us more money, take some of the pressure off the district is kind of. So you can look through that, and if you have ideas or thoughts on what I should be lobbying down at the Capitol, send that to me. So. And there is MSBA, I can't remember what day it is, but board members, we can organize some board members to go down there as well if we have an interest in that. So that's all I have unless there's questions for me.
Okay. Yep. Thank you very much. And we'll go to Mary Merchant.
Good evening. The first thing on my agenda is the Achievement and Integration Plan, and that is up for board approval tonight. It is funding that we get, and one of the biggest components is we need to work with neighboring school districts. And prior to this year, it was Kelliher and North Home. North Home no longer is doing the work you need to get that funding, so our partnering school is Kelliher. I met with Sherry Dahl, the principal, last week, really feeling good about our plan. Boyd was one of the people who came to our meeting. He's on that committee, and really feel like we have purposeful goals. And it's we're up to redo 3-year plan, so it's 3 years, and the 3 primary areas are achievement that we have to make a goal for. Our achievement is focusing on career and college readiness, and starting with our younger students when they go to the Young Authors Conference and the Creativity Festival, and then our older students when we do career fair and the college fairs and those types of things. And then our integration goal, that one's really working directly with Kelliher. And Sam, I'm giving you the kudos, even though I know the other 2 guys were included in on it. But we are looking at starting with activities this summer with our football players, doing some integration with each other and practice with different skills and things. So
the only thing is I'll say, and Jeff brought this up earlier, that is not a co-op. It is a practice exchange.
It is so our students can truly interact with each other, and I know our focus is football, but it's for that social interaction also, to get to know each other as students from neighboring schools. And then our third goal has to focus on teacher equity, and that one, when you read it, is a really hard one to meet because it's wanting to really go and recruit diverse teachers. Number one, I'm grateful that we don't have a big turnaround in teachers every year, so we really do have a solid crew of teachers. And so you can look at other ways to focus with professional development with them and things that will be geared towards the students. So we made our focus our PBIS and working on that and getting more teachers engaged in that. So when we have our workshop days, that's some things we'll work on with teachers, and then for the data for that, it'll be pretty easy to track. Tracy's wonderful when kids come in for shout outs, and what we'll do for the data is really just tally and tally which teachers are giving them out so we can see where we're improving on how many different teachers and students are getting recognized.
Real quick,
yeah.
At the meeting was informative. So by completing these requirements, we are then funded to the tune of roughly $28,000 to do these, take the kids to these events and everything. Is that correct?
Yes, and so we have goals set for 3 years, and each year you want to increase those percentages. So for this next year, if we don't meet those, you can do adjustments accordingly. So it is something that you can tweak and resubmit every year. And so yes, by putting the work in, submitting this, we get the funding. Read Across America for March reading. Elementary on March 7th is going to have some different stations and have kids rotate around to all those. And then we're also doing a mystery reader where staff, or quite frankly, I think anybody who got the word out, pick a book and then you read it and see if the kids can guess. And that's my homework I still have to do. I got my book picked out and submitted to Laura, but and then elementary for their third quarter PBIS activity, they're going to go bowling on March 26th. High school course schedule is part of the information that you receive, so looking at registering students for classes sometime during March. Diane's working on the course handbook for the kids to look at. And then I just listed some of the different sessions I went to at the MASSP conference, and the biggest one, sadly with the least information for me, was the READ Act for secondary. They have not yet decided what training our high school teachers need to get, so as soon as we know what that is, we'll move forward with that. And then networking with the Northern Division principals, that's always very beneficial, just to have those conversations of, this is what's happening, what would you do, how do you handle this? And then I just listed who our keynote speakers were. Do you have any questions? Okay.
Very well. And we'll go on to Sam.
They won. I have a fun announcement. The Bears won, the girls basketball won against Winnemac in their first round playoff game. They will go on to play Kellier on Thursday. So very exciting for them. 150-36. Boys basketball is playing after them. So if we get done here, you can go watch. Okay, we're going to talk mostly pre-K. You've also got a slate of spring coaches in front of you, all of whom are regular faces. But today's conversation will be pre-K. I'm going to start by introducing Nicole Gate. She's going to come up and chat with us for a little bit about possibility for a private pre-K taking the Head Start classrooms in the building. So we're not going to jump into this presentation yet. As a way of potentially replacing the Head Start, the folks that Head Start meets, or the need that Head Start meets in terms of bodies and kids, Nicole Gate has met with Jeff and myself to preliminarily talk about a pre-K, private pre-K. So if you want to come up, you can give a little bit more detail on that, and then if you have some initial questions. Yeah, we're not getting into that yet. She's going to go first, and then we'll. Yeah, but yes, that's the same.
Nicole has a different one?
I don't have a
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Just making sure I didn't need to turn around here.
Okay. Hello and good evening. First, I would like to thank you for this opportunity for me to present to you. I'll be reading a little bit from my paper since I'm not used to presenting to large groups. So this was the easiest way I felt the most comfortable to do it. As we're all familiar with the fact that our community has a very high need for pre-K and childcare programming, I'm both eager and passionate about opening my own program. My goal would be to fill those gaps and provide high-quality education for our youngest learners. Early learning programs are crucial to young children and gets them ready for the demands of kindergarten. So I'm here tonight, I'm proposing to Lakewood School District and the school board to open my own private preschool program housed within this building. I am registered with the state under the name of Bright Beginnings and currently working with them on the licensing process. I began that process approximately in July. It's kind of a lot more than I thought to it. I would like to rent the space that the Head Start program utilized for many years here at the school. I originally had another place that I was planning on doing it, but after I learned that the Head Start program was closing, I thought it would be ideal to have the students here at the school. I I would be willing to pay monthly rent like the current daycares do here and hoping for a comparable fee as that they already have in place. About my educational and professional background, I have dedicated 15 years to teaching preschool at Lakewood School. 6 years were with the Head Start program and 9 years were with the School Readiness program. I also subbed here for 6 years prior and have held other positions outside the school working with children. I'm a couple classes shy of my master's in parent, family, and child education. With that being said, I feel confident that I have the experience needed to be the director and to assist with the teaching role of my own pre-K program. Then I have some private pre-K facts. It's my understanding there can only be 4 specialized daycare licenses in one building. Mine would be considered a center, so we would be in compliance with the state because we already have 4 daycares in our school. I could accept birth to school-age children, but my current plan would be to take 3 to 5-year-olds. I would prioritize the older students as they need to be kindergarten ready. However, if we had enough enrollment, I would be willing to do more than one class. There can be 20 student maximum with 1 teacher, 1 parent, or 1 para ratio. I've had a few people approach me about working within my program as a para or as a teacher. I also have a waiting list, and I haven't advertised at this time. The schedule would be Mondays off for students and a prep day for teachers, if it was feasible or affordable. Class would run Tuesday through Friday, full days for students. School Readiness does not have class on Fridays, so there's the possibility to take some students if I have the availability on Fridays from the other program. Financing and assistance, I'm working with the First Children's Finance for the business aspect, which includes rate studies in the area. They kind of do rate studies to see what the other daycares are charging per day. They give you numbers of the need of childcare in the area. The weekly education fee has yet to be determined because this would be dependent on many factors. For example, total students, employees, rent, and other expenses necessary. The program would allow CCAP, which is Child Care Assistant Program from our local county, which is aid for lower income families to pay for school childcare up to $250 a week. The program could also get a parent-aware 3 or 4-star rating, which means a high-quality program meeting certain standards. I believe our School Readiness program has that in place already. This allows scholarships for families who qualify. Some examples of some of the criteria that they expect, there's like certain hours per week, days per year. You need to follow like a particular curriculum that is on a list. There's also a particular assessment tool out of a list, so you have to meet those requirements. If it's a 3-star program, families would be reimbursed $287.50 per week, or if it's a 4-star program, $300 a week. I also would hope to be able to use the school food program, and then my program would reimburse the school.
Yeah, we would bill, the lunch program would bill her as a private individual or private entity.
Transportation piece, I haven't fully determined yet. Ideally, it would be helpful to use the school transportation. I don't know if there would be a charge for that. I think that would make up my mind which way I would go with that. However, transportation to school is a lot more convenient for the families to get their child to come. The school schedule and the future. I would mostly follow the school calendar, but possibly run a few specialized theme camps in the summer months. And possible future offerings, I've thought about different types of things like after-school care, parent-child classes for kids that are younger, like birth to 3, and possibly even like tutoring services for school-age children. That's about all I had. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
I might have missed this, I think you touched on it. Up to 20 students, and then how many teachers or adults?
So
how does that work again?
it'd have to be at least 1 teacher and 1 para per 20 students.
Okay. And then the para, is that your employee, or would you, okay,
Yes.
so you would hire
Yes. Everybody would be my employee. It'd be a private pre-K within the school.
Much like Head Start. Head Start was a private entity. I know that
Yeah.
can get confused because it's within the school building. Well, we were just renting them, or giving them space, much like
Correct.
what you're asking.
Yes.
Like, other than using the school and possibly transportation. Was Head Start using other transportation?
Yeah.
Okay, so sounds like it's a possibility. But other than that, I mean, really, in my mind, it's just a matter of, well, we've had one proposal, and then I guess if anyone else would like to enter a proposal for a learning center, and it has to be a learning center, like you said, because we're already maxed out with daycares. So, and whether or not we're gonna do anything else with whatever room, I don't think we are. So it's really just boils down to that, in my mind.
And I think, I'll get into this in terms of the timeline. My thought was, she gives you some information today. We can talk through more kind of specifics, logistics at a special working session, potentially. We'll talk more about that. And then you would formalize or vote on a contract at the March meeting. So we would then do the behind the scenes of, okay, what is the price? What is the transportation? What is the calendar? All of that stuff. And then we put that contract in front of you at the end of March. So that's, we're not looking for a decision. I just wanted to get this on your
Honestly, I
table.
don't even know if we would need a special, I mean, we're making an agreement with a private entity.
Oh.
Head Start.
We're talking my meeting is about pre-K.
Okay.
So I'll wrap that into, if she's a part of that conversation, we can talk more about specifics if you have it then.
You said you used to work for Head Start?
Yes.
How many years did you do that?
6.
And that was here?
Correct.
What was, were you recently with them, or?
Nope. That was the first 6 years when I started teaching preschool. The last 9 were here at the school readiness program.
Okay, so you've been here for 9 years. Prior to those 9 years, you were there with Head Start for 6 years?
Yes.
So it's a long time ago.
Correct.
Okay. So you have some experience.
Yes.
You would charge families similar as to like a daycare rate, is that what?
Yes.
But then there's the possibility for those parents to be reimbursed $300, right? Is that my?
So, yep, some families could get reimbursed through the CCAP through the county if they qualified for like daycare assistance.
Yeah.
Or they could also, if they qualify by income, they could get the scholarship through the Parent Aware program. And it would pay a portion or all, or depending upon how much you get awarded to, so.
Sure.
Have we had any other interest in, I mean, really, that's about it, it's just if there were.
What is the category? Because you're not like a child care. What would it be categorized as?
Sole
Through
proprietor
DHS.
or?
Charge.
Oh.
Center.
Center,
Okay.
okay. Yes, centered, I guess, yeah.
But you're not really asking anything from the school other than the space?
Just asking about the space,
Just
yeah.
transportation?
And then meals, transportation. I suppose there's some other little details.
Yeah,
Cleaning.
custodial stuff. I mean, and that's typically our task would be to work through the specifics of that contract. Similar to what we do with the daycare situation, where we then put the contract in front of you and then you can, ask questions.
Is there, I mean, I suppose it all depends on how much you're charged for renting, but is there a minimum number of kids that you would need to operate out of the school? Have you, because you have, let me ask this, do you know do you know right now how much you would be charging for a child, or are you leaving that kind of up to the school to decide? I'm confused there.
That will be my decision, but I just am not quite sure. I'm waiting for some information back from that First Children's Finance program that I work with. They are trying to put together different scenarios to see what would work. I haven't been able to advertise because I don't know where my space is yet. So once I advertise, I know I'll have a better idea of how many students are interested. And then we would know, would we need 1 classroom, 2 classrooms? And then we could kind of get a better idea of what we're charging and how to make it work for everybody.
Our only decision is whether or not to let her have the space.
Sure, and with that, I have another question. I'm sorry, I'm just putting you on
You're
the spot
fine.
here, but,
We're just nosy.
What's my-
so if she comes in and works out of the school and she's up for the space, if the kids are riding our bus and whatnot, is the school responsible for her background check and whoever her employee is? How does that
I
work?
believe I am.
I would have to check with legal.
With the daycares right now?
How do we
Well,
ensure
they have
they're
to
coming-
have liability insurance and
Yeah.
all of that, so, they're just renting the space, so we're not, she'd have to do her background check, and then she has to do that for her licensing anyway.
Yep.
So, she would have to have liability insurance
You would
and,
then have access to the building.
Yeah.
So that's what you want. Well, I mean, worst comes to worst, then
You've already went through that though, through like the school.
Correct, yeah,
You, the employee, whatever's
yeah.
packet needs to be filled out through the school district, you've already,
Do the
I won't mind
daycare
on.
send fees to the school?
Mhm.
Okay, so then, yeah.
Part of the contract process is also ensuring she's taken out sufficient insurance, both in probably property, but significant liability insurance, I would assume. And we, as our school insurance mandates a certain amount, like a certain dollar amount that she has to carry in order to kind of be covered on the school. And so that's part of that, but insurance does a lot of that, right? Or covers a lot of that. When you're talking about liability on our buses, we're making sure she's got enough liability coverage to allow those kids on our buses. That makes sense.
So your student cap would be 20?
Yes.
Is that what that would be?
Yes,
Per classroom.
per classroom, if there was more than one classroom,
Per
but 20,
classroom. So how do you see that working with you being you would hire other teachers, is that what you would do?
yes, I would hope to hire, I mean, depending upon one or two classrooms, for sure, one teacher, one para. I would have to be doing a lot of the paperwork stuff, but also being in the classroom as well, helping when needed.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
you have a waiting list, is that what you?
Yes, I do.
And just because it's a hot topic and people are, so, like, are they interested then in paying like a daycare rate then? To send their kid to, like, is that something that you see, like, the interest there?
People have asked, what do you plan on charging, that type of thing, and I haven't gave them a solid number,
Sure.
but I did say it would be comparable to daycare, but I said it will also be more than daycare,
Sure,
because it is a educational program.
yeah.
So I try not to give specific numbers yet, because I just really don't know.
Curriculum requirements around it?
If I do the 4-star or 3-star rating through,
Okay.
through the
Parent
state or whatever,
Okay.
parent then there is. Otherwise, I don't believe so, but,
Okay.
yes,
do families qualify for pathways?
yes. Yeah, and I think that's similar to the Parent Aware as the Pathway Grant is kind of connected.
Different name.
Yeah, kind of.
So with the rest of the classroom, is there also a request for you to be using other parts of the school? Playgrounds, gyms,
Yes.
and so,
And my understanding is you can't use it alongside the other daycares at the same time. So if they're in the lunchroom or if they're in the gym, but you can do it with other students that are within the school.
Or like under school purview, or like a enrolled student for us. Is that what you mean?
Like I
Yeah,
could be with our class out on the playground when the kindergarten class is out there, but not when the licensed daycares are out there. So no common
It's a
space is
DHS
shared.
rule.
is that part of the reason why like Head Start, they eat separately from the rest of the kids?
Head Start and our pre-K classes eat
Yeah.
together. I think that's more of a logistics.
It is, okay.
Easier
Yeah.
for the kids.
It's
Time
more
thing.
so a daycare rule.
Yeah.
So like the 4 daycares have to be very separated. Like it's a DHS requirement.
And that's the difference in terms of being a center, is that you're not under those same restrictions. I don't think.
But they could likely eat at the same time.
Yeah.
The VPK can be.
Yeah. like I said, a lot of this we'll hash out with the contract, right? So that's the work we will do in terms of making sure that all of this is kind of clarified. So, any last questions? Okay.
One or two rooms.
Yeah.
Well, it's,
Right?
it's the school ultimately, the one room in the school, right?
Well, she has to determine if she's gonna ask for one or two rooms.
Technically, the Head Start did have 2 rooms. They combine with each other. I don't know how that's looked at, but there's 2
Well, I
connecting
guess that's
classrooms.
the, I guess, are you,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
so, well, I mean, the question being 1 or 2 rooms, I mean, you can have 20 kids in one room?
Right.
So are you looking to have 40 kids? Is that your request?
I mean, if it's out there, I mean,
Yeah, that's the way I read it, that she was open to the idea of going bigger if it was there and if there was room available, so.
right. I just didn't want to advertise prior to knowing for sure where my space is, because I didn't want to cause any issues. And licensing can take a long time. Like I said, I started in July, so it could take a while. My goal is to start fall of 2025. But
So I think we'll keep talking about this. I'm encouraged to hear, I think the general consensus is we're gonna keep working on this. Some of this might also be impacted by what we're gonna talk about next. So with that, I will say thank you. Appreciate you coming. It was great, good information. Okay, I'm gonna jump into this. I will caveat, we'll talk about this in the timeline. My goal right now is to give you the information we have been chewing on for the past month or so. My other hope is that we would have a separate meeting, a special working session, to talk about this stuff in depth, because I think there's a lot to talk about. Talking about schedule, talking about budget, talking about what are we charging kids. What you have on the sheet of paper, there's also copies up there, is what I'm going to present with maybe some slight variation in numbers because I tried to update it today. So, yes, please ask questions. Also, I think my hope is that we could be here for a long time if we really dive into this stuff. So, just keep that in mind. Okay, here we go. Pre-K planning. The timeline I'm hoping for. Today, I'm presenting the board with information on class size, projections, budget, and our potential proposals. We heard from Nicole Gate about possibility of a private pre-K. We have a tentative date of March 11th. Craig, I've heard that you can't make that, but would like to suggest a special working session to dive into this stuff, because you'll see there are a lot of scenarios and a lot of hypotheticals in terms of how we want to make these decisions. And then at the end of March, we do a formal vote where we bring, you kind of have a concept of what we're going to propose, but then you vote on that, both the pre-K or the private pre-K, Bright Beginnings, did I get that right? Bright Beginnings contract, as well as our VPK structures. So that's my hope. So this is not, you do not have any decisions in front of you today, and that's intentional because this is a lot of information. So, current status, as of actually today, we have 16 4-year-olds currently applied. From my census tracking, we have a census list that gets populated when people inform us that kids are born or move into the county. I have one more possible 4-year-old who's kind of on my list. Now, having said that, we also gave a tour to a family today who might have another one. So there's always more kids that might be wanting a spot. But that also includes people I've reached out to who have said, I don't want a spot, right? So I've actually done a little bit of, for lack of a better word, recruiting, but like checking with people on that census list to see, are you in or you out? You don't have to formally commit, but we're trying to get our numbers in order. So 16, one more possible 4-year-old. We have 3 possible 5-year-olds who are interested in deciding. 5-year-old, the ages are important because it depends on what you qualify for, or it determines what you qualify for. 5-year-old cannot get VPK funding, which is about $5,000 a year from the state per kid, and that's a kid basis. Our max class size in one room on one day is 20 kids. That's the ratio Nicole was talking about. 20 kids, one teacher, one parent. We could potentially have more kids if we have different scheduling, right? They do 2-day pre-Ks or something like that. We'll get into that. We also currently have 5 3-year-olds who have expressed interest in programming, some of whom have put formal applications forward, some of whom have said, hey Sam, I would be interested, put me on that list. I am operating on a $145,000 expense budget. And by operating, I mean that's a little higher than what we're budgeted for this year. I'm assuming based on increase in salaries, increase in materials. I would say that's conservative, as in I think we'll actually spend less than that. But for the sake of planning, let's use that $145,000 as our benchmark, and we'll see where we land. We are projected, depending on how the wind blows a little bit, we are projected to run this program within budget for this year, as in like without any major supply expenditures, we will be on target for this year. Okay. Current changes to voluntary, VPK stands for voluntary pre-kindergarten. It's about 5,000 students a year. We last year applied for 15 slots. We got 15 and then applied in October of this school year, because we had another 5 kids, an additional 5 spots. So we have in our current classroom, 24-25, 20 VPK funded slots. So we're receiving about $100,000 for funding this year. We applied for next year, we've already put that application in, for another 20 spots, but it's very possible they will reduce us down to 15, which has been our historical number. We might get 15 and then be able to reapply for additional, but we don't know that. So I don't know exactly what our VPK number is. We're hoping for 15 or 20. The list in front of you is what the legislature has changed. So you must be, a kid must be 4 years old on September 1st and meet one of these income qualifiers. Now, having said that, Jeff informed me today that there is a bill in front of the legislature that includes this last is defined as at risk by the school district cut out. As in, the intention, we think, is that they are trying to narrow what the eligibility of this money is. Because that last one is the most broad of all of those categories.
They're proposing to take that out.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. It used to be if they were 4 years old within the time range, they qualify.
Yeah, it used to have no
Now
income
it's
guidelines on it.
income-based. So they're throwing lots of seats out there, but the money's not behind it, so they're narrowing down who qualifies for the funding.
Okay.
Now, in this second bullet, it says qualifies using state general financing, financial eligibility requirements, blah, blah, blah. That is 67% of the median income. So it is actually higher, as in you can make more money than a typical Head Start qualifier line, right? So there are more kids that would qualify for VPK funding than would qualify for Head Start. So that's encouraging to me, because it means that more kids who apply would be able to qualify for it. But it's still in flux. I mean, depending on if this passes, we'll see what happens. The other piece that they just want on these eligibility, I have no clue and have received no guidance in terms of how they're going to verify this. As in, like, is it an honor code thing by the school district? Do we get audited at some point? I don't have a clue what that looks like. So, yeah, go ahead.
Off the top of your head, out of the 20 kids you have, how many fall under that last category is defined as at risk by the school district?
Well, that's a very broad category, as in, I mean, we have summer programming where, with like freshwater, all of our kids are at risk, based on, right, MCA or...
MCAs, academics, single-parent household, all sorts of things.
Yeah, so I think your question is, of the 20 kids who are in the class right now,
How many have
How many
received
of them-
eligibility based on that?
yeah, we don't ask for income information.
Oh, so that it's different.
Yeah, like the application for the kids who are in the classroom right now
Okay.
did not, so I'd be guessing.
Yep. No,
Half? I don't know.
okay.
Other kind of new information about this, these 2 last big bullet points, we can charge students who do not fill a VPK spot. So if we have 15 slots, those first 15, and we are definitely taking dates about when people apply, those first 15 4-year-olds to fill get VPK slots, and then beyond that, we can charge the kids who aren't on that list. We can also charge for extended or wraparound, and those are specific words, care. So VPK is based on a 350 hours a year programming. We function, no, not yet. We function at about, currently with 4 days a week, I think it's 48. I have the number later on. So wraparound care are all the hours beyond that 350 mark that we offer. So we can charge based on that wraparound care. So even if you have a VPK spot, we can say, you can pay us for that extra money. So this is what our budget looks like without any family fees, right? So if we hit this first fully VPK funded, if we hit that and we get all 20 spots filled, we get $100,000, we're about $10,000 short of budget. And like I said, if we are being conservative about 145 and saying we actually maybe are going to spend 140, that number is less, right? So that's not an insurmountable number for me. Gets a little harder when we hit partially funded. We get 50,000, that's about 10 kids funded. And then if we get no funding, no VPK funding, we're about 125,000. And you'll notice that that Pathways money, it's 15,000 in the 2 VPK partial and fully funded. That is income-based funding also. So if we have nobody qualify for VPK, then we will have nobody qualifying for Pathways, so we won't get that money. That is not a likely scenario, right? We are just, I mean, I'm looking at the 16 kids who are already applied, and a chunk of them are going to qualify for VPK. Now again, I have not asked for financial information, so I can't bet on that, but I have an inkling that we'll have a certain percentage.
It didn't really look like the criteria, there was much for income, though. It was all social situation.
No, that second bullet, qualifies using state general financial eligibility requirements. That translates to 67% of the state median income.
And free and
Yes.
free and reduced is the first one.
Yeah, which is also part of that. Okay. Okay, so this gets really a lot, and I just wanted to put a lot of potential scenarios in front of you. Each of these tables is a different weekly amount, and I picked these amounts based on what daycares in the area are charging. So the bottom right, you're getting per week a low 125 amount I got from someone. That's pretty low. I don't think a lot of people or places are doing that. To a 160, which is a little bit on the higher end per week. This is what it translates to per month, and then per 9 months, what our school year would be. So if we're charging 175, top left, that's what that translates into for families based on their income, right? I am not showing you the income table because it is additionally confusing because it's based on family size, it's based on, I mean, whatever. 160 a week is less, 145 a week, 100 a week. I put the really low, 50 a week, because there are, Staples Motley, for example, is charging $50 a week for their VPK program. So there are other schools, like I have not found other schools charging the top row of that. Now, nobody else, no other schools have published what their structure looks like with these new guidelines. Like literally every district is going through this right now. So that's where the research becomes hard because it's like nobody's really sure what's happening. So I vote we don't spend a lot of time on this because we can, this will become, this is your last slide, this will become where we talk more about that. The yellow highlighted is what our budget does depending on how much we take in across families. So we'll talk more about that. So this is the slide I want you to kind of think about, because it all of the hypotheticals that affect this. And for those listening, those in the room, these are all potentials, right? None of this has been formalized yet. So I don't want it to run the rumor mill that we're charging $165 a week. We have not decided that yet. These are just me putting information in front of you. All families would pay $60 a month for the school year in pre-K. That's 20 families at 20 kids, $60 a month gives us about $10,000. So would fill that gap, that fully VPK funded gap. And we can, remember, charge those kids for the wraparound or extended care. So that covers $10,000 of it. Nope. I've been meaning to follow up on this. I have not heard back from social services if that CCAP money, child care assistance program that Nicole was talking about for daycare, would qualify for us as a VPK program. I imagine there's some hesitancy about double dipping in some of those ways, so it's possible that could cover this stuff for a family. I don't know that for sure. If they're not, and like I say up here, you as the board, and we can choose all or some. This is a multiple choice question, right? If they're not VPK eligible, then we would use one of those sliding scales, which I will ask you to decide on at some point. The other option is changing the schedule, right? So we have a limited 20 spots in a classroom on any given day. If you do 2 days, so you have one group that does Monday, Wednesday, another group that does Tuesday, Thursday, you double the number of kids that you can take. And I would say across the board, the majority of schools are doing that model. And I shouldn't say that. Of the schools that I've been able to figure out, Kellier, Staples, Warroad, Roseau, Sheena left, but they have a drop-in, drop-out where you do $15 a day. Most places are not doing a full week, 4 days a week. So this is where the hours become important. We're currently running at 138 days. That is with no Fridays, 828 hours. VPK money requires 350 hours a year. If we move to shortened weeks, 2 days a week is 69 or 414, above that 350. 2/3, so you're doing alternating weeks, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, next week, Tuesday, Thursday. That hits your 85 or 510 hours. The other piece is that we could potentially offer some 3-year-old programming. So let's say we do a Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday model, and then we have a singular 5-day 3-year-old programming available. Gets a little funky with teacher prep and with teacher commitment, right? Because Fridays are prep day for that classroom right now, so we would have to be careful on the union stuff there, but that's a possibility. Yeah, so now the ultimate, right, just to make sure it's clear, the more kids we have, the more money we can charge, potentially. Because you have a limited amount of VPK spots, right? So if we can take 30 kids, you have now 15 spots of paid, whatever they're paying, 15 spots of paid time, paid kids paying to be there. Which would potentially also lessen the burden of the kids who are having to pay, because you can spread the cost out across multiple families, more families than just the 5 or something like that.
When did you say you find out the number of spots you're allocated?
I don't know. That's a Sheena question. I would have said this spring at some point, not like April.
Oh, okay.
Like not soon.
So then you said you applied in October?
Nope. Original application is in January. I think it's January 15th. They award you a certain number of slots. Then once everyone's enrolled, there's a redistribution, and that's what happens in October. So they have extra spots from Staples who didn't fill 3. So they say, okay, if you want more, you can apply for more in October.
So did we only allow for the 15 at first and then let more families know when we had 5 more
No,
spots?
we said, we'll take all 20 because we want to fill the classroom and then we'll figure out the budget sort of thing. And that was also under the old VPK rules where you can't charge kids who are 4 years old, which is not the case now.
The cost would be the same whether there's 15 or
Right.
20 kids in the room.
I will comment, we've been kind of swirling around this with school budgeting. The real funkiness of this is like, we don't know. We ride such a roller coaster with how many kids are in each class. And a lot of what we're feeling in terms of pressure was created by a large class last year. I've only got 16, and that's with all the hubbub happening, and that's with doing more kind of outreach than I ever did last year. So I'm not saying, that's when I look at Nicole a little bit like, at this point, I don't think you would have, unless it's a lot of 3-year-olds, potentially. I don't know that we would have a 40-person class for you. But I don't know that. Maybe you got people coming out of the woodwork.
You said, what do you mean a 40%?
Well, she's talking about if she gets enough applicants, she would do 40 kids as opposed to 20. I don't see the need in that, but maybe you get a lot of 3-year-olds potentially.
There might be a lot of kids that are currently already in the daycare facility that switched to this.
Yeah,
because
yep,
education
that's
rates
possible.
low.
I think I'm talking the 4-year-olds, right? Like we as this program, the VPK program, have identified it as a kindergarten readiness, right? The assumption is, and this is different obviously for every kid, but when you sign on, the intent is that your kid's going to kindergarten next year.
Yeah.
Doesn't always happen that way, and of course we are flexible and try and work with families to figure out what is the best option for that kid, but it is intended to get them ready for kindergarten.
So we're going for 4-year-olds with this one. Nicole, what are you shooting for?
3, 4,
3, 4, and 5. So are we duplicating efforts, and are you guys looking for the same classrooms? Or do we already have?
Well, we have
You have a classroom,
Yeah.
and you already have, and this would have a classroom already, or are there?
When you say classroom, are you talking about a physical space, or are you talking about? VPK is already in a room down there. They will stay there. She is looking at moving into the Head Start rooms who are leaving.
Okay.
So she is filling a vacancy
And
for,
if you expand it or anything like that, you won't need any more classrooms, right?
when you say expanded,
If you set it go beyond 20.
it wouldn't be a space expansion, it would be a schedule expansion.
Oh, so, okay.
Right.
Same number of kids per day.
Yes.
It's just.
Different
you may have-
kids.
Okay.
Yeah, so you'd have a Monday, Wednesday group and a Tuesday, Thursday group.
Do we have an age limit on how old you are to ride the bus?
No, we haven't.
Actually, I think you could ride the bus.
Well, I was thinking younger, not older here, boy, but,
It's challenging.
yeah.
And there are families who decide that that is not the right thing for their kid, and that's often how
Yeah,
that
3
happens.
is pretty young.
Yeah.
It's a scary thing for a 3-year-old, but.
I'd have to research how many Head Start kids are jumping on the bus. I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't either. So the question here is, are you okay with a mid-March meeting to try and figure out what to do here?
Yes.
You okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. You're right. This is gonna.
Lot of questions.
Yeah, and I would encourage you now that if you want to give me a call and talk through this, 100%. Like, please, we can go through the spreadsheets and you can give me feedback on what you want to see. If there's more information you want, happy to make that happen.
Well, I think you're on the right track with the whole demographic thing of the area. I mean, there's
Trying.
a number of kids that are gonna be 4 years old, or even 3 and 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
So there's your planning.
Right, and I will say though, while I am being short-sighted for next year, because that's who we're trying to serve and figure out. We are setting some precedent for years to come, right? There will be a year where we have 30 kids who want to be in a classroom prior to VPK, which is the case this year, right? We have 24 VPK kids and then another 6 in Head Start, all of whom are going to be in kindergarten next year. So while we might not feel the pressure as much this year, we will feel it at some point. We just ride that roller coaster. So some of this is, yeah, we got to make a decision for next year, but we also have to be setting ourselves up for being in the black, like making sure that this is even if you're running a little bit in the red, like that this is not a real money pit. Anyway. Jerem, did you have a question? I could see it brewing.
So if you went private, right, we wouldn't have to do this then, correct? Or do we still have to?
We still have to make some decisions about.
Well, I know we have to make decisions, but do we have to have this?
We want to run a VPK program.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
right, that was my question.
Yes, good. Do you have a question?
I'm just thinking of, and it can be added to our discussion for March, but I'm just thinking of also, aside from if someone opens private and all that, how well functioning of a classroom with like less kids every other day, is that like more quality education, even if we don't have, like if, is it better to be at max capacity 4 days a week, or have a smaller class size with more like hands-on, and that can be a more of a curriculum conversation too, but.
How many of you have had 4-year-olds before? Like either have them now or have had 4-year-olds? Who wants to run a classroom of 24-year-olds? You want to? Oh, you're coming in. I'm going to put you in that class. 100%. I think it's a great question because 24-year-olds is a lot.
Yeah.
They are totally capable. Our teachers are totally capable. They do a really good job. They've got good classroom structure to make sure that's managed. And I think you're right. It's a good consideration.
So I think the history on that is, you have make a good point with the smaller classes, but the problem with that is the continuity for the kids. If they're here for 2 days and off for 3 days, then they come in on Monday and they're starting over. And we used to see a little bit of a difference between, because Head Start usually had the kids in there more days compared to school readiness at one point. So academically, there was a difference because those kids that are there every day, they learn the routine, it's consistent.
And a conversation that we had at the beginning was when you also look at every other, let's say you have a Tuesday, Thursday kid, and with our in-school daycares that can take kids that are older, typically they can share a daycare full-time spot with the alternating days. So it's also, they're still coming here every day, but
and that's
just
a parent
thinking for
decision.
that fluctuation of numbers too. So like if you have 20, sure you have 2 smaller, but then you're not panicking and having to change the, schedule. But.
Yeah, and that's a little bit of I've struggled with this every year I've been here, which is now 3, in that feels like we go through this process every year.
Yeah.
Where it's like, do we change it? Do we not change it? Are we going to charge? Are we not going to charge? I would like to get to a point where it feels more stable, if nothing else for my own sanity, but I think the community could really benefit from some stability in terms of what can they expect out of this program.
One request I would have for March, if you could research it and just find out what would be the interest in parents, even splitting up, or is it only going to be, are they only interested if it's every day or?
Say most parents that I talk to prefer as many days, full days as possible.
As a parent, it's way easier to do the same thing most days than every other day or,
That's kind of what I assume.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's great for trying to accommodate, but.
And that opinion might change if we charge more too, right? Because that's the other thing is, you're sending, right now, it's school, right? They don't have to pay for school.
Yeah.
But, I think, that's a good question. I'll try and scheme maybe a survey of some sort, or do some polling. I do want to put a plug in. The Head Start conversation is one that I've been keeping track of, but have not been fully in the mix on. And by that, I mean, how did the decision get reached? All of that. I know that Sharon Milner, Executive Director of the Northwest Community Action, did go to the county board meeting last week, 2 weeks ago. As elected officials, I think there's value in you communicating to other elected officials. I think that the Head Start, this is me talking personally, Head Start is a real loss for this community. So we will trudge forward and do really good creative solutions for our kids, but I think that I'm not sure that there's anything that can be done at this point, but I do think that's a real loss. So there are community members doing really good work trying to figure out how that came to be, and I give them a lot of credit for holding, asking the right questions. So just a plug on that. So we will do some scheduling. I had tentatively had that March meeting at March 11th. I know that there's maybe some scheduling issues, but I will watch your emails for some scheduling, and we'll do it at that point. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, Sam.
And Jeff said there was no transportation, so we'll go ahead and close the working session. And anybody need a break? If not, let's roll right in at 7:55 into the board meeting. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Need a motion and a second to approve the February 24th, 2025 meeting agenda.
All motion.
Motion by Sonstagard, second by Hack. Second by Hack. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any board presenters? Written communications? Old business? New business? I need a motion and a second to rescind the approval of the January 21st, 2025 organizational meeting minutes and approve the January 21st, 2025 organizational meeting minutes with the revisions. And the revision, let's do the motions first, sorry.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Johnson,
All second.
second by Sonstagard. Now for discussion, just for details, it's just, we had it worded, like one was the vice chair, we had our titles wrong.
The titles were wrong,
Yeah, we corrected those. Any more discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Need a motion and a second to approve the January 27th, 2025 regular board meeting minutes.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Severs,
Second by Hack.
second by Hack. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Need a motion and a second to approve the invoices, financial statements, bank reconciliation, wire transfers, and purchase card statement.
Motion by Kay Johnson.
Motion by Kay Johnson, and I'll second that. B. Johnson. Give Johnson to Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Approvals of personnel. It's just appointments, right?
Yep.
Needing a motion and a second to approve the appointments as presented. The appointments are Austin
Heimstra?
Heimstra.
Yeah.
Yes.
Junior high softball coach, TJ
Bergs.
varsity baseball coach, Ryan Henderson, junior high baseball coach, Kurt Storbeck, varsity track coach, GP Sweet, assistant track coach, Nick Otto, junior high track coach, Jennifer Otto, junior high track coach, Mike Papera, boys golf coach, Sam Lyon, girls golf coach, and Sam Longsmith, junior high golf coach.
Longset.
Oops, what's that?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Kay Johnson,
I'll second.
second by Severs. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Need a motion and a second to approve the retainer agreement for master electrician services for 2025.
Motion by Hack.
Motion by Hack, second by Sonstagard. Is that
Yep.
what I heard?
Yep.
Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. A motion and a second to approve resolution 2024/2025-30, accepting a donation of $2,866 from Wickstrom for Lake of the Woods School.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Kay Johnson,
I can second.
second by Hayes. Any discussion? Thank you very much, Wickstrom.
Yeah.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And a motion and a second to approve resolution 2024/2025-31, accepting a donation of $100 from the American Legion Auxiliary for the backpack program. Motion by Sandsgaard,
I'll second.
second by Severs. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Need a motion and a second to approve the Achievement and Integration Plan for July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2028.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Kay Johnson,
I'll second.
second by Sandsgaard. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Need a motion and a second to approve resolution 2024/25-32, accepting the revised 2024/25 school year budget.
Motion by Hack.
Motion by Hack,
I'll second.
second by Sandsgaard. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.